the last video, we saw examples of Redux Persist. Today we will be understanding the deep concepts of Redux Persist and each and everything related to it. To understand any concept for a beginner, it is very important to understand each and every function or a reducer or action that you are adding into your application. So for a recap, Redux Persist takes our Redux state object and saves it to persisted storage. Then on app launch, it retrieves this persisted state and saves it back to Redux. So for the implementation, when we are creating our Redux store, we pass the create store function a persisted reducer. As you can see, we have already created persisted reducer using persist reducer in our last two examples. The persist reducer wraps our app's root reducer. So here we are having two of these reducers and this is our root reducer. So the basic work of persist reducer is to wrap the app's root reducer. Once our store is created, we pass it to the persist store function. So after creating our store, we have passed this to our persist store. So here we use the statement let persisted is equal to persist store. So this function ensures our Redux state is saved to persisted storage whenever it changes. So this is basically responsible for storing this amount inside that. And even if I refresh my page, I will always get the output of 6. That is where I left it. I left it at 6, I will receive the output at 6. So this is all because of the persist store function. Now we are using React, so we wrap our root component, that is the app component, with persist gate. What persist gate does? This delays the rendering of our app's UI until our persisted state has been retrieved and saved to Redux. So it is responsible for the delay of the rendering of our application's user interface. So here we have assigned it to loading null and the persisted is assigned to the persisted, that is the persist store method. Now we must customize what is persisted and what is not persisted. We have also talked about this in a little bit brief. So let us understand this concept in deep. So if we don't want to persist a part of our state, we could put it in blacklist. That is, maybe I do not want to save this 6 or this 2 inside my persisted store. So I am going to put this component inside my blacklist. The blacklist is added into the config object that we used when we are setting up our persist reducer. So let me show it to you. So here is the persist config. Here this is the storage and this is the key. The key is the root. If I change it to, so I will assign it to storage and next I am going to assign a blacklist. This blacklist say contains amount or something that I do not want it to display. So that component, that is the amount, will not be persisted Actually, we do not have any component named amount, so we are not getting any output. But if you want to remove any component from being persisted, you are going to add it inside the blacklist. We have done this in the first video of Redux Persist, so you can visit that video. So the blacklist takes an array of strings, and each string must match a part of the state that is managed by the reducer we pass in the persist reducer. So this is the persist reducer, and we have passed persist config and reducers inside that. So the reducers is inside counter slice. So we have three things inside our reducer: increment, decrement, and increment by amount. So if we want to pass something inside the blacklist, then it must be an array of strings, and it must be a part of the state that is managed by the reducer. So whatever functions we are adding inside the state, it should have a reference to that. Now, similarly, after the blacklist, we have also seen there is a whitelist. So the whitelist is set up in the same way as the blacklist, but the difference is only that it defines the part of the state that we want to persist. This is a clearly opposite. So here when we want to assign a whitelist, so instead of blacklist, we will just replace it with whitelist. And this will also be a string, an array of strings. So we can also add a blacklist with a nested property, and we can also add state objects inside that we want to persist. Basically, we will be using whitelist and blacklist in applications like if our user is logged in and when our user comes back to the page, we do not want the password to appear on its own because that is related to privacy. So we will put that inside the blacklist. So that will not be persisted inside our store. But if we want the profile to be persisted, that is the user information or the sign-in information, so that the user does not have to type again and again, then we will add that inside the whitelist. So now, if we prefer to have all our persistence rules in one place, instead of co-locating that with the associated reducer, we can use the combined reducers function. So inside the combined reducers, we have added all our things in one place so that we do not have to look it in different places. Now there is a merge process. So whenever our app launches, okay, let me just remove this. Okay. So whenever our app launches, Redux sets an initial state. So you remember we have put our initial state to 0. We did set the value to 0. So initial state has a value of 0. So shortly after this, Redux Persist retrieves our persisted state from the storage. So now what will Redux Persist retrieve? This 6 from the storage, and then our persisted state overrides any initial state. So initially, when this app is launching, this is 0, but then Redux Persist comes into play and it sees the 6 in the storage and it overrides the 0 and we get 6 as an output. The merge process is meant just work automatically for us, but we can also take manual controls of this process. So for example, in the older versions of Redux Persist, it was common to manage the rehydration process by catching the rehydrate action in our reducer and then saving the actions payload to our Redux store. But we will not go in that much detail because this is a beginners friendly video. So we will let Redux do its part automatically. So the rehydrate action is dispatched by Redux Persist immediately after our persisted state is obtained from the storage. So if we return a new state object from the rehydrate action, this will be your finalized state. So we don't need this anymore unless we need to customize the way our state is rehydrated. So we do not want that to do. Now we have to understand that how deeply the merge process looks inside our state for changes. We have mentioned that the merge process overrides the initial state with whatever was persisted. We have also seen that where we can see the persisted state. So inside inspect we will go to applications and we can see whatever. So inside the local storage we will have a URL that will tell us whatever is stored inside it. You can see counter has an initial value of 6 and you can also see rehydrate is set to true. So we are talking about that rehydrate. So this is the value that we want. The counter is set has an initial value of 6 and persist has a version and rehydrate. So this is where we are going to see whatever is stored inside the storage. So by default, the merge process simply replaces each top level piece of state. So whatever is at the top level, that will be changed. Like the name counter. Now there are some advanced customizations also that you can use, like transform. So transforms allows us to customize the state object that get persisted and rehydrated. So we will be using a JSON file and then we can do it according to that. But we are not going to do that much in detail. We are just going to use it in simple.
So Redux Persist will be used to increase the user experience of our app, and also it will give a better understanding of what is going on inside the app. That is, it will give us a clear concept of what is being stored inside or what are the privacy policies that our app gives. So React JS applications must have the priority of good user experience. So that is it about Redux Persist. Keep coding and do like our video. Subscribe to our channel as we bring to you videos on a daily basis on React JS for beginners, and also happy Holi to all of you. So see you in the next video.